Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to discuss one of the most popular topic of reactjs, that is useReducer hook in reactjs. This is one of the most popular topics among the developers so far that is useReducer, which allow us to handle some complex state manipulation and updates. And this is what we are learning about in this video. So guys, let's get started. So in this video, I have created one new class. So guys, don't worry about this course. I'm going to update all this codes on GitHub and I'm going to share the link in the descriptions. So I named this file useReducer hook. So you all know that there are two types of state management in React.js right now. The one is useState and other is useReducer. In detail, we have discussed about the useStates in our previous videos and I've created two, three examples on the useStates. But now today I'm going to discuss about the useReducer. Actually, guys, one thing to remember, useReducer hook is better alternative to useState hook and is generally more preferred over the useState hook when you have complex state building logics, and you can say when the next state value depends upon its previous state value or when the components are needing to be optimized. Let's get started, do a practical example of this. So I'm going to create a demo here, and first I'm going to initialize the use reducer. All we need to do is I'm going to reduce reducer. So once I click, it actually call this hook at the top, which is fine. And this reducer accept two arguments. The first argument is function, and the second argument is initialize the new value, or we can say initialize value. So this is the function. I'm going to name it reducer, and the second thing is initialize value, or we can say initialize objects, values, fields, whatever we need to pass. We can pass multiple values as well as in shape of object, right, guys? So the second thing is initialize value. So I'm going to first declare it initial value, or I can say initial state. I'm going to pass it 0 right now. So I'm going to use this. So this is how we are going to generate this use reducer. And about this, what is this? This is actually a pure function. And this function actually takes state plus action and return a new state. So what this state and actions do, in state we have the values, like we pass the in the use states the values we are going to store in the state, and in actions we are going to pass what action we need to perform on the on this uh, function when we call this function, right? So I'm going to do a practical example. We also call them the pure functions because it doesn't return back any invalid data or any this is also not have any side effects, so it doesn't produce any side effects, so don't worry. I'm going to make an example of this. So now I'm going to create a pure function reducer, and I already told you it accepts two arguments, right? The first one is state and the second one is action. Anomalous function. So now I'm going to do is console.log so we can check it out what we are getting in this state and action, right? That's it. I'm not going to do any fancy coding right now. So now I'm going to say const, and one important thing, use reducer also return the array with two elements. Like we get the array of in use states with two elements. So here I'm going to say I can say state and other one dispatch. So I'm going to tell you the difference between both. Basically, state is actually okay. State is actually our initial values or the values we will get after this reducer will return. And in dispatch, we are going to indicate that what type we need to actually call when we are going to call this use reducer. So in dispatch, we are going to say that we are going to dispatch a request call, a post call, or get call, what type of call we are going to dispatch, what type of delivery we are going to do. And state is actually having the actual values of our data, right, guys? So now till here, I hope this is clear to you. Now I'm going to return some JSX. You all are familiar with this. Okay, I'm going to say I've already written these things. Don't worry, guys. So HTML things, it's not anything complex. And I'm going to say p tag, and in p tag, I can show the state value. So what I'm going to make in this example, I'm going to make two buttons here. You can see by default the state value is 0. So I'm going to make increment and decrement button. Once I click on increment, it is going to increment this number. And if I click on decrement, it's going to decrement this number, right? So before that, I'm going to apply some CSS here. So I'm going to import the CSS class, right? And here I'm going to say class name heading so that it can show in the middle. It looks good. And now I'm going to add some CSS. So guys, for CSS, uh, I can recommend you some websites from where you can generate a CSS, like I can CSS generator. So you can use these websites for your help. I've used this online generator, so you can generate the CSS and call them in your projects. So I have already generated this CSS for button and for the p tag. So I'm going to use this p tag and so that it looks better. Cool. And now I'm going to create two buttons. Okay, it looks good. I'm going to name it increment, and the second one decrement. Right, guys? Seems like this. Okay. And now I'm going to name these buttons. Okay, already named it. That looks good. So if I go and check the UI, it looks much better. So I have already written this CSS and you can generate it online, and you can I can share these all these things CSS and all this source code on my GitHub project, so you can download from there. You can find this description in the link. So now what I need to do, and once I click on click, I need to actually call the dispatch so I can pass the message that please do this from this type of dispatch from me. And this dispatch I'm going to do it this practically. So let's get started. So I'm going to say dispatch. I can write a separate function for this as well as, don't worry guys, dispatch and type. Type is actually if whatever we need to perform an action, we need to pass the action with the type name. Right, guys? So I'm going to say here increment, and same thing I'm going to do for the decrement, right? So once I click here, it will dispatch here, and it is going to call this reducer function, and this reducer function will get the state, whatever the current state, and the action or what action we call. So let me just call F12, and I'll show you. Okay, if I click increment, so you can see here we get a type of increment. So now I'm going to tell you what actually happens. When I click here on this button, it actually call the dispatch. So dispatch actually hits our main pure function reducer. And in this reducer, I already told you we pass two things by default. That was state, one thing. And the second thing is action. In action, we pass the type, and in type, we can say that what action we need to call. So I can say here if action dot type is equal to, we can say something like increment, what we need to do. We can simply say return state plus one, right? And I'm gonna say, If decrement, then -1, fine. And we have also have default, so you can write it, no problem. Okay, cool. So what actually happens? So when I click on this button, it actually I call the dispatch function. So when I click a dispatch, dispatch is actually something which actually calls this pure function, reducer function. So this function have two states already. One is in state, the current state, and the second thing is action. What action type we pass here? So we pass increment. Now we can go and check the practical example. There's some error. It seems like there's some error. So what was the error? We need to check it out. Okay, it looks good. Action.type, which is fine. Then we have action.type to decrement. It's also look good. And then we return straight. That's fine. And if we check the on click on dispatch and type, it looks good. It looks good. So guys, just refresh it and it is going to work fine now. You can see here, clear this, and if I click increment, increment, so we can check the state value and then decrements. So you can see the differences. So this is how powerful this use reducer is. We can pass multiple types here, and we can perform multiple action on our states. We can have the previous state as well as, and we can perform multiple action in our state. We can modify the state as much as we can. And I prefer use reducer are much better in managing the complex data, and also when we have multiple type of data we can use the use reducer. But if we have simple approaches, if we have only we need to manage the simple data, and we do not have any complex issues, so we can use the use state as well as. So the guys conclusion here is that the use state reducer is a nice addition to this React library, which I think that's a perfect thing, which allows us for a simpler and a predictable and organized way to update our component state and makes sharing data between components a bit easier. Yet that's true. We have a separate function here, and then it is pure function. It do not have any side effect, as well as it always return the results, which is good. We can pass a default here, and it is always going to return something. We can also do the error handling as well as in this. And then it is a very simple way of writing the code, and it looks much better, and it lets us optimize the performance of the component as well. That trigger the deep updates because now you can easily pass dispatch down instead of typical callbacks. So it looks much better and much readable code. Instead of we pass the callbacks, this dispatch looks much better and so meaningful, as well as that we are going to dispatch this thing. And on the state management, these states we are going to have the previous state, as well as we can modify and return the new states as well as. So thank you very much, guys. I am going to cover some more important topics of the React.js, and please don't forget to subscribe and like my channel and comment if you don't understand anything. I'm always ready to help you in explaining the React topics in quite detail. Thank you. Have a good day.